everyone. Welcome to Facebook Live. I'm Lisa, an animal care specialist here at the Desert's Edge. If you look over my shoulder, you'll be able to see our bad-eared foxes. This is Stella and Pombe. They are foraging for some of their favorite diet items right now. I just tossed them some crickets and mealworms. So rather than seeking out prey with their eyes, you might be able to notice how Pombe and Stella are actually looking for the bugs. They're keeping their heads low, facing the ground, and their ears upright and kind of facing the ground as well. So they are actually searching for their food using those huge ears rather than a sense of sight. So that's a really cool adaptation for those enormous ears that they have. Also, if you notice those big ears, you might think that they have a great sense of hearing, which is absolutely true. They will actually look around and point to the ground and try to find some bugs that they can hear underground, and then they will dig them up. So that's a really cool adaptation for those. The keen hearing, they also can help keep their temperature in check using those huge ears. So they're able to thermoregulate, and that means that if they get too hot, they'll actually be able to disperse some of that body heat through those enormous ears. So that's a cool fact of those huge ears that these guys are named after bad-eared foxes. So those kind of bat-shaped ears that they have. Like I said, we did a mealworm and cricket forage for them, some of their favorite diet items. They do get fed a variety of food here at the zoo. We give them some chow, we give them some meat, and some Omnivore Diet. Omnivore Diet is just kind of some chows and meat and veggies kind of ground up. And then obviously the bugs that they get as well. They get mice and rib bones once a week as well. So kind of a variety of food. They are omnivores, and in the wild they would primarily eat some, mostly invertebrates, any kind of insects that they can find, that they can dig up. They might even go after some lizards, small rodents, but primarily insects and termites. Do we have any questions filtering in at this point?
Actually, you just answered the question about what they eat.
What they eat in the wild.
Yeah.
Well, we have Stella here on the left, and then we've got Pombe the male on the right. So they are a breeding pair. We had a kit family of they had kits in last year, in March of last year. So they had 3 kits in that litter, and that's their first time having a litter here at Brookfield Zoo. We actually bred foxes way back in the zoo's history, but it hasn't been, we haven't had any kind of litters since the 70s, so it was really exciting time for us. And then we just saw some breeding interest a couple days ago, so we'll see. We're hopeful.
How can you tell Stella and Pombe apart?
Good question. If you look, Pombe on the right he's just kind of a lighter color overall, more of an even color. Stella on the left has a black stripe, so you can just kind of tell by their facial features and their coloration.
How many kits do they usually have in one litter?
They usually typically have around maybe 1 to 4. That's pretty average for bad-eared foxes.
And how long do the kits stay with the parents?
They stay usually for a couple months, maybe 6, 7 months, 8 months. Once they reach sexual maturity, they generally kind of disperse. These foxes are very social in the wild, so they are they kind of stay a monogamous pair, but they have ranges that often overlap. So you'll see several different groups of foxes kind of foraging together, and that's advantageous for them. They kind of get that protection of a lot of individuals foraging together, so if there's any kind of predators, they're more likely to hear them approach.
Yeah, so what kind of predators do they have?
Well, the kids especially are more vulnerable to like birds of prey. Oh, you might have seen a chow just fall. We have a chow feeder up there, and we loaded that up as well, so that's a cool enrichment device. But they might fall prey to any kind of larger animal that might be. These guys are from Africa, the Africa area. There's some Africa, and then there's some in the eastern section, and so they might fall jackals or even pythons or some other the larger animals around there.
Do you want to discuss the enrichment feeder a little bit, as well as some of their other enrichments?
Absolutely. I'm going to just throw them a few more bugs. So we try to encourage a natural foraging behavior for these guys. And so to do that, we have a timed feeder, and it kind of acts like a conveyor belt. So we'll load up some diet items, and it'll go throughout the day, and it'll just kind of fall at random times on the exhibit, and that kind of keeps them up and foraging and active throughout the day. So it's more stimulating. It's not just here's your food once a day and that's it. A lot of the other enrichment that we give them is something like puzzle feeders. They're very into that. They like to, like I said, forage, so that's a natural behavior. So we want to stimulate something that would be natural for them. So we might hide food on exhibit. You can see Stella, again, looking or hearing for those bugs. So that's cool to see that in action. So it's just a lot of those kind of devices that might help stimulate their natural behaviors.
Where did the babies from last year go?
Oh, they went to various zoos, and they started breeding programs at various zoos. So I believe Helen was one of our females. She just had a litter recently. So it's cool to be able to hear that the youngsters actually are now moms. It's awesome to hear that.
Are they endangered?
They're actually considered least concern right now. They're not at this point. There's, like I said, there's two different distinct subspecies of the bad-eared fox, and they're broken up by the geographic area. So there are pretty good populations of them in a couple of the national parks that are over in Africa. So right now, no, they're not considered endangered at this point.
Do you do any training with them?
We do lots of training with them. We actually do what we call station training. So in the morning, the foxes shift off exhibit. They have exhibit all the time. We kind of just let them go in and out whenever they want to. But off of the habitat, there is a shift ramp to their holding space. And they do shift in, and that's where we have air kennels set up. So we're able to get them to station, which means that they have to stand in a certain spot, and then we ask them to enter the crate before they get fed. Again, those behaviors just help us maintain just certain husbandry standards so that we're able to work in with them in a safe way. If they have to go to the vet for a checkup, they will actually voluntarily go into a crate rather than us trying to catch them up or net them, which would be very stressful. We also do what's called target training. So we have a target pole that we can actually ask them to touch their nose, and that target pole is used to train certain other behaviors or to get them moving around in certain areas. So that's a very common type of training that we do here.
How long do they live?
In the wild, they typically live about 6 years or so. In captivity, usually about twice that. So typically around 12, 13. Home bay is about 11 and a half right now, and Stella's about 9.
If people come to the Desert's Edge and they want to see the bad-eared foxes. So they come to this habitat and they don't see them. Where else could they find them?
Good question. This is very, they do like the exhibit, but you will oftentimes find them in their den section of the habitat. So if you walk over to this side, there's the den section there. This is attached to their habitat, and they are able to go in and out as they please. And they like to sleep in there. It kind of mimics a natural den that they would have in the wild, and it just kind of is their safe zone. Obviously, there's no predators here, but it's just a natural behavior for them to kind of want to den up, and you will often find them in the den. So if you're here at the zoo, you don't see them on exhibit, check that den. Where they are.
So are they nocturnal animals?
Very good question. So there are, remember how I said there are some certain, so if you have, certain ones are actually considered than others, and it depends on the location. So it's really cool that South Africa will be more certain times of the year, and then more diurnal at other times. That's based on what they eat in the wild, which is depending on what the life cycle is determines their activity.
So I personally have a question.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Whereas, I don't know, a lot of our other canines don't.
Right.
Really canines, are they? If they're a fox?
They are dogs.
They're related.
They are,
okay.
You know, the canine.
Yeah.
They are canid. Good question about the tail, because
it just seems really, really big compared to the rest of their body.
It is very fluffy. If you remember how I said that they are social animals, so foxes in the wild will actually use that tail as a form of communication in addition to their ears. So if you see an animal that is like hunkered down, its ears flat back, its tail pretty poofy, that could mean that maybe they have anxiety over something, maybe they're a little frightened, maybe they are agitated about something. When they're greeting an animal, they actually fluff out their tail and kind of hold it in almost like an inverted U shape. And that allows them to kind of see the disposition or the behavior of that animal at the time. They're able to kind of what's going on with them. So that's a really cool way that they greet each other as well. They get excited, their tail gets super fluffy. Very cute.
Yeah, that's something I've just always wondered. I'm like, why are their tails so big? Even like in comparison to our red foxes here.
Yeah.
It seems like they have much bigger tails. What's your favorite thing about working with foxes?
Section, which work active contact settings to shift on and off their habitats, or for servicing purposes. Foxes were able to work in with them. They're calm disposition. Again, when we had those kids born, that was just so much fun, because we, to be able to work in with the youngsters and have the little fox family running around was super exciting. So we're hopeful that we'll have another litter. They're just super sweet. They're, they're very curious. They like to interact with Enrichment. So they're great to work with.
And it's kind of difficult to tell from this angle and this distance about how big are they?
They're obviously full size. There's not a whole lot of size differences between males and females. Pombe right now is about 9 pounds. Stella is about 11. So you know, they're kind of your average size for them. She's a little bit on a fluffier side, shall we say. But again, we just saw some breeding interest and impact how they're interacting with one another.
And can you remind us again how old they are?
Sure. Pombe on the left here is about 11 and a half. Stella's about 9. Well, thanks a lot for joining us. I hope you enjoyed watching the foxes forage, and please visit them and visit us anytime. They'd love to see you guys. Thanks a lot.